Hello world! Frida Reba Darcy and Patricia O'Connor here today on the Bonsai balcony. It is a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday. The kids are out enjoying the pool. Why aren't they in school? But regardless, what am I the school police? It's a beautiful day to be playing hooky, I suppose. There's our little Frida Reba Darcy. I am Patricia O'Connor. This is the Bonsai balcony. Today, on today's show, we're just gonna do a little bit of maintenance. I'm probably gonna chat up a couple of trees before we get into it. But I'm just going to do a little maintenance here. Just a little quick look. This is this tree is the Ponderosa. It's over 100 years old. It is a Yamadori. It's getting rid of some of its old beat up needles while it is pushing out new ones. All the while, I have had this tree grafted with Japanese black pine, and the Japanese black pine graft is growing like a weed, which is a very positive thing to say. It's growing well. This is the future of the tree. All this other stuff that's doing well, that's encouraging. It tells me that the tree is basically happy, healthy, and it will be a great home for that to grow into the new apex of this beautiful tree. So that's just a little quick catch up there. We did a little bit of carving a couple of weeks ago. Let me see if I can get in here and make that exposure work. At the base of this oak tree, look at that bark. This thing, you see that little roll over there, and where it's got a little rollover on the belly? All of those little sprouts that I didn't cut off soon enough cause that little roll there. I have to nip those guys off in the bud, because I don't think it was like that when I got it. I think I allowed that to happen by letting little shoots come out a little bit before I killed them. Kind of like I'm letting this one go, because this one's going to be our new Associata, our new bottom brick. Actually, that's not our bottom one. Our bottom one might be one of those back ones back there. But at any rate, what we were looking at, we're here looking at the work that we did to this oak, and we're also looking at the work we did by pinching this tree. I just reminded myself I need to rotate this guy. I probably got some more pinching to do on the back side of it. All of our little ponderosas and all of our little Japanese black pines are looking across the board. They're all looking really good. That's the little twins we did a little work to the other day. They look like they're doing good. This is a little Japanese black pine that we put in this pot a couple of weeks ago. It looks like it's faring well. I've got another one over here that I transplanted, and it looks like it could go either way. The color is not as good on this guy. In fact, it may be telling us it's not digging the show. But everybody else, with that bearing that one exception, I was really worried about this little tree for the reason that I removed an excessive amount of wire from this tree for a couple of weeks ago, and that ended up being like major surgery into itself. I'm just gonna kick back and try to take care of it and not do anything to it. We're not gonna do candles on this. I saw that I put a lot of wire scars on there, trying to get all the wire that was deeply embedded on that. And that's kind of part of it's a debate with me. I have trees that have wire in the trunk, and it has caused the trees to be, to my way of thinking, really nice. That's not always just such a bad thing. But the removal of that wire at some point can be the end game. Like this guy right here was made by leaving the wires in place and just letting it eat them. And if I went in there now and tried to pull those out, and they'll just be farther and farther gone as the tree goes, but we will always have those cool results. And if I went in there and tried to pull that out, I don't think it would go well. I do not think it would go well if I did that. and I think I would really greatly weaken the tree. So there's some. So on like getting back to the one we were just looking at, I said, well, let's try and let's see. Let's see what it's going to take. And to be honest, that pretty much reinforced that there are going to be trees for which I think it's going to be less intrusive to just let the tree eat and bury the wire. What it will do because of that is it will swell up really big and fat in between those strands of wire, and it will back bud and do all kind of other cool things. And then as the tree swells up, it'll always be kind of cool and segmented a little bit like that. I mean, the bark will always show those fissures, but I don't think it makes for. I think it's a desirable looking tree, and I think it probably is a lot stronger for leaving that in there than if I tried to pull that out. And so that's my experiment there in removing that wire. We're just going to sit back and see what happens, but I can just tell you that had that been a more prized tree, I would have bailed out about a quarter of the way in. I had to be okay with the prospect of losing that tree based on what I saw and removing. I was like, this is pretty abusive, and if this were this tree, I wouldn't do this. But it's this tree, and this tree has been a guinea pig. It could turn out and give us stunning results, but I would have to say, out of the lot, it was the one that I decided that we would take the chance and see about removing wire. And it looks like we may have gotten away with it, but I'm pretty sure I weakened that tree by a lot. So no candle cutting, no maintenance on this guy until its season at least is passed. Anyway, that's a little catch up there. That's a little catch up there. I want to do some maintenance to a couple of my trees today. There's some. It's not necessarily a great time in the summer to go cutting on these guys. But on the other hand, if there are branches that I want to remove for reasons, then there are reasons why I might want to put that off until in the fall and then get rid of them and say, yeah, thanks for all the chlorophyll. Or there are some other things that would come into play. All right, let's start here. This is our Dawn Redwood. I feel like I'm starting to get. This is Dawn Redwood. It's in a glazed pot. You normally don't see redwoods in glazed pot, but this being a Dawn Redwood, like the cypress, like the bald cypress, it loses all of its foliage. Excuse me. It loses all of its foliage in the winter, and for that reason, it can get a pot that's a glazed pot, and that is the color. I have been trying to chase a design on this tree that was desirable over what I've been looking at the last couple of years. And at one point, about, I don't know, last year before last, this was the last tree to bud out on my table. And I was looking at it, I'm going, this is my worst tree. And I'm going to give this thing maybe another 2 weeks to show me a bud, or it's going to the dumpster. And I'll probably still want that pot. But, I mean, that's how tired I was of trying to get a shape out of this tree. Now I'm pretty well glad that it did bud out that year, and I'm pretty glad that we got another round of it. And I've spent the last 3 years just trying to get some vigor back on a tree whose shape was bad and whose strength was weakened by me pulling some amateur stunts on a Dawn Redwood. And I think I probably saved myself a lot of trouble. I might have saved myself a lot of trouble on their cousin, the bald cypresses, because I did a styling on this, and then a year later I was like, yeah, that worked out really well, but I think that was a compromise because I didn't know how well it was going. I wish it would have been a formal upright. So I redid my apex about a year later, and that was too much, too little for this tree. And we've been going around and around trying to return to something ever since. I still have a good ways to go on this guy, but I think at least I can see the tree that I'm building. Now, I don't necessarily have branch structure the way that you would normally, every other branch thing going. Nor do I on these bald cypress. Your eye may go to that quickly. I've got a lot of things that don't quite. But here's the thing: we don't just go reneging on all the energy these trees, these pre-bonsai trees, pre-bonsai. Our shape will change when we get closer to our finished product. We'll get there. That's not going to be something hard to do. I don't worry too much about things like this. What I am concerned about is energy allocation and having enough foliage to make the amount of rollover that it's going to take to make this trunk be this trunk times this guy times 2 and times that guy times 2. So I'm going to let, for the most part, my mind's maintenance thinking is we're going to let bar branches go until fall, and then I'll make a decision. But when all of these things lose all of their fronds and are no longer helping us, and we've gotten the maximum amount of energy from all of those, and then that energy has been taken and stored either in the trunk or down there in the roots, that's fine. We're no longer photosynthesizing. All the needles are gone. Then I'll go through and do my every other one and bring us down to bald cypress 2025 final shape. And then spring will roll around and the tree will bust out with a million other things that are totally counter to that. And we're going to let most of those go. This is talking actually on both trees. And we're going to let most of that stuff that they make that's counter to what we cut back, we're going to let most of that stuff go until fall. And whenever all the leaves fall off of all that stuff that it decided to make, so in other words, we will have harvested all of that energy. We wouldn't have taken energy from the tree early. Then we'll cut it back to our original shape, or we'll reevaluate some of the branches that we left in lieu of some of the ones that we might like better that came along this past year. And so it goes. But I normally wouldn't be cutting stuff off of here unless it behooves us to do so, unless there's some other advantage to doing so. So there are a few of those here. I thought we might just take a minute and incorporate that into the show. On this one, I'll look forward to having a branch. I'll look forward to having a branch out here. I'll look forward to have one of these two sprigs go out and do something. If one of these guys will come out to me, maybe I can take it more over this way and then do some wood carving and take down this whole thing. And we'll try to keep our balance going and our tree going with one of these guys. Or maybe we'll get something cool down here. But I would love to do some wood carving there. This branch is, this is a perfect example. I have two branches right here in a row. I could be getting the photosynthesis off of both of those branches, but this one is throwing this one into shadow, and I want this one. So rather than toss this guy in the fall, I'm going to toss it now so that this guy will still be here in the fall. It was probably going to decide at some point that it was not its priority. I just gave that branch new lease on life by removing the one that I had that was getting kind of big for up there at the top. It was bigger than everything around it. It was bigger than the stuff above it and below it, and it also had war scars. Now the war scars were my fault, but the proportion parts, they were I could have lived with that for a little while longer, but why? All right, that was all that I wanted to do in the way of cutting on the Dawn Redwood. We're gonna, in a second, move to the bald cypress. I could put some more wire on this and take this way, but see, I've already got some, and it's not too bad. We can outgrow this, but I've got a little bit of wire scarring on that already. I don't need to go, I don't know, going in between those wire scars with another wire. And then not scarring them would be one way to do it. In other words, not leaving them in there this long. Or I might could just put a bamboo stake right up there and take that little bend out of it. It's coming towards us here in a way that I'm not totally crazy about. Anyway, there are ways around that. I'm going to need to explore that before that becomes even more woody. Now I want to look at the tops here. This is my 3 bald cypress trees. These guys, whenever I show certain views of them, some people are like, golly, I didn't realize they were. Yeah, this guy is, this is a pretty big tree. It's like, that's a foot next to that guy. That's a big foot next to a big tree. Yeah, and that was my good foot too. The other one is a little lighter for racing. But you see all these tops here. You can see where over time this tree came to me with this leader, and I grew this leader. I mean, when I got it, that was a limb that was pointed straight up, and they had made the collector, the bonsai artist that I bought this from, had made this chop and had this leader wired straight up. This was a branch going straight out this way. So what they did was they put some wire on it, bent that straight up, and then made this chop. The whole point of making an angle chop is so that as that wraps around, we'll have a fluted design. We're not going to try to make a transition from a blunt end to something then coming off the top of that and being the top. So, but if we look, and this will just burn itself in better and better and better over time. But if we look, this is the original. Somewhere along the line, Pat chopped it here and let this guy take off. And this probably grew, way up like that. And then I came through at some time later and gave it another chop. Where was that other chop? Let's see, that was one right here. I gave it another chop. That was the one I said probably took off forever. Now, like I was saying before, I'm not concerned about those bar branches. They're making us a lot of energy, and they're not going to radically do anything. Nor am I concerned so much about these 2 branches that are over one another. I don't have anything over here opposite of them to really counteract that. They're photosynthesis makers. If I were looking at this as an economic, I would say these 2 guys are money makers. They don't both belong on the tree in the ultimate design, but they're not hurting us right now. So then you can see this was the chop I would have made. Probably looking at how close that is to the top of the tree and how old that is. I probably decided last summer that the tree was slowing down because it was summer, and did a chop here just to make things interesting. What happens when you do that, when you make that cut? You release all the oxen, and the tree goes, I thought I was going to go into midsummer kind of hibernation there, but apparently not. Apparently we have to grow a new apex, and then it starts increasing the energy to go up and add energy to one of these things, which ended up being this thing. This ended up being our new top, and I got bar scars in there, but I also got a good shape. Do you see how we transitioned from here to here fairly cleanly? And part of that was done by just making deciding what was going to be our apex, and then making an angled chop from there. And then when I bend that up, that was a really good and clean one. I've got one on another part of the tree that I feel is a little less clean than that. And I can either decide to do nothing. I've got, a couple of years to wait and see whether or not that kind of smooths itself out. Or I can take evasive action early and fix it. And by fix it, I mean have its replacement back at about the same height before summer's in. I'm like, we're prepared for that. For instance, right here, about the time I would have done this, and I'm really happy with the way that came out, I might have done this. I don't remember when I did this. That's why I say about the time, and I might have. Being this down. Less than exact. I could probably go back and find it on video, but I didn't think of that before now. The one behind it, I'm okay with that. I could probably, no, I'm okay with that. You can also see how that guy is starting to do its rollover. Speaking of rollover, these, focus. These are the guys that we worked on, we cut off just a couple of weeks ago. I think if I get in there better and focus, you should be able to see there's a little ring within a ring that says that's already rolling over. That's already rolling over in there. That's cool. Also, they're not pouring anything out. I water these trees. One of these, just about almost one of these. Some days one of these plus, and some days almost one of these. On the light days, it gets almost a full one of these, and on hot days, it gets more than one of these. This is a pretty big watering can. What I'm showing you there is it doesn't bleed a lot. I tend to use cut paste on things that I'm worried about, places where the bark will separate. I don't want to make any scars at the tree. You see, if you can kind of maybe see, I don't know how well that's going to show. If I were a nervous type and with this bark is separated here from the tree, I wonder if I just peel that off. This is where I wondered what that would look like 4 years ago. That's a scar I made by wondering what that would look like. Since then, I keep these parts. This bark is going to separate here. It can, that's fine. There's bark underneath it. Don't go tearing on stuff is probably the lesson there. So we get back to up here. This apex was probably made, I guess probably after this one. I'm not as happy with those results. I could give it another year. I could not worry about it and just give it until we're a little closer to showtime somewhere years from now. Or I could just wire it up and do it over. There. Now, would we do, we kill that? Yeah, we killed that. So, that's our guy. I think that's a good transition. Somebody in 2 weeks' time say, hey Pat, take that off there. Yeah. Anyway, you can kind of see that angle now. That'll roll over, and this guy, when it's going up, I'm going to cheat that just a little to help this transition up. Pulled it over slightly a little more than I want to. I exaggerated that to help this part. All right, that's a little maintenance. That's a little tree maintenance there. What else do we have? What else do we have going on? Nothing. I had a lean going on this guy, and I'll put some wire on it. I did that without you, and there's not any carving gonna go onto this tree. The reason I did that without you is because wiring takes two hands. You need to always be able to hold the base, and then with the other hand, of course, you're wrapping the wire. And as I would get this, like I would hold it here and then do that first wrap, and then I would hold it here and do the second wrap. And you hold it tight. You keep that squeezed. Oh, that sounded like a belly buster, and the way the kids reacted, that couldn't have been good. Anyway, you hold it at the second bend, and then do your next rep, and you just go all the way up with that. And of course, I can't do that. Hold it with one hand, wrap it with one hand, and then stick my finger in the lens with what? Hold the camera and stick my finger in the lens with what hand after I. So I did that part of the wrap without it, and at the same time decided I didn't have any work to do on that other than just a little bit of straightening on that guy. Our trees are otherwise taking good shape. This bald cypress came to me with a chop flat right across here. I made that wedge. I'm proud of that wedge. I was such a newbie when I did it, and I like that. It's very manufactured, but the idea is the tree's gonna do the rest. It's gonna roll over that. Now, when I got the tree, these were not the original leaders. It had two leaders that were doing something like that, except they were spread out even a little bit more. And I went, in the next 2 years, if that tree puts out a sprout at the base of those leaders on the inside, on both of those, right, then we'll go with that. And, because those leaders were out here and about the same distance that far on the back one. So this was a sprout that came up. Actually, the back one is a sprout that came up at the base of the tree the original year. This tree made a sprout and it died. And then I waited 3 more years to let, for that stuff that was hanging way out here. And one day at the base of it, put out a sprout right here. If you can see where my finger is in there, they can if you point the camera at it, Pat. Like right there at the base. And except it was like right here. This was the sprout at the base of a leader that was out here. And that leader was bigger than this one because it was the one that was on it when I got the tree. And this is the leader that came up at the base that I thought was better positioned than the one I had growing. So that's how that all evolved. And I was hoping this leader would come along. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years later, this leader came along and I said, I'm gonna point that straight up, let it grow beside the existing leader. And when that thing shows me that it's hardened off and it's going to survive the winter, it starts turning this color instead of that light green like I'm freshly made. When I see that it's going to be our surviving piece, and then I started chopping back that leader that we made for 3 years. This is now 2 years old. This is the front of our tree. So when we're looking at it, this wasn't a consideration at the time. But it was like, to me, it should have been, and it is a really big perk. This trunk on the tower behind is going to be fatter than the one in front. I think that's important that this doesn't eclipse that. And that wasn't why I cut it. I cut it because I cut the one that was out here because it was just better positioned over this part of the tree. So I've got both of my leaders coming up really close in here like this instead of way out there like that. And the point to all of this is these guys are just going to get fatter, and that's just going to roll over more, and that stuff that I manufactured at some point this is just going to swell and close up, and we'll still have these two trunks fusing. And I think that's just, that's what we're building there. And it's been a lot of fun to build too. This has been a lot of fun to work on. Do I have my stuff with me? I do. I'm just looking to get rid of something. Oh yeah, there it is. What's there? Oh, look at that. I was getting ready to cut this, and it has a branch coming out of the back of it. Just as I thought, well, that's not going to do anything. There it is doing stuff. I've got some more pruning to do on this, but nothing that I have to do now. We had been on a period where for the last couple of years, I've been building, if you're just catching up, I've been building ramification on this tree. And this was our foundation, and this was our secondary, and now we were looking at tertiary. And then I decided that I want to apply those lessons to some of my other trees, and I want this bald cypress to do what it and the dawn redwoods do. They put out a prolific amount of new branches, and even on the older growth trees, you will not, to my way of thinking, see a whole lot of branches on there that are over 10 years old, maybe even 5 years old. The trunks will show their age and show their bark and show their scars and what they've been through. And the flip side of that is there's the hope in the rejuvenation that is these lush green shoots that it just puts out all over. So then I come through with the bonsai eye and chop those back to every other one, and then I back off the abundance of fertilizer that they get now whenever we get closer to a developed tree. And right now we're just letting everything overgrow. I like the way I have those tops going now. I like this top better than that little mess I had going there that needed to be fixed. This could have been better on the wire scars, but this made a nice looking top. I think we're okay. I think we're pretty okay with that. Pat did this. What is that drooping for? I probably did that. It's okay. Anyway, that's 30 minutes. That was just a little bald cypress, dawn redwood maintenance, and a little look around the balcony to see how stuff's looking. Things are looking good here. Everybody's just really so lush and green. I took a few days. I took last weekend off and did some stuff around here. Just a little pat maintenance day. That was actually nice. Here's our trees that we did. Our colander girls. I've already evolved an idea that would have made something easier than this. So I know what our next round is going to do. That I'll be able to cut these with scissors whenever it comes time. That'll be a couple of days after this show. I kind of smacked forehead and goes, why didn't I? And I'll let you know on that later. Like and subscribe if you guys have not already. Our next drop will be this weekend. I'm not sure. I know one show we're going to do was the show that I planned to do last weekend. I still plan to do that show because it's a good show to do. It's a good time to do it. And then the other one, I'm not sure what it is. So here, how about that for vague? I appreciate you. And Frida appreciates you. And thank you all. Thank you all so much for watching. Okay, crows, you can have it. Yeah, the crows can have it.